The Skagit Chamber Alliance is composed of the 6 chambers of commerce in Skagit County. Together, we represented about 2,000 unique businesses. Our purpose is to work together for the interests of our members, our communities, and the future of Skagit County. Skagit Chamber Alliance members are Jessica Kaiser from Anacortes, Steph Reese, wave your hand, Burlington, Monique Brigham, Cedro Willie, Mark Holst, LaConner, and our friends up in Concrete, I think, are online, Annie Bazier and Val Stafford. So we appreciate their efforts. So the way this evening is going to go, I'm going to go through, that didn't sound right, take turns with the legislators and hear from each of you for about 5 or 6 minutes about what's important to you in the upcoming session and maybe what you expect to see, what you want to have happen. And then we'll turn it over to the audience, both in person and on Zoom, to ask questions. Those of you that are in the audience, when you're ready to ask a question, if you could just come up to the microphone, that would be great. I'll tell you when the time is to do that. And then if there's some time at the end, some of the legislators might be able to stick around and have conversations with you. So let's start with Representative Shavers, please. Six minutes or so on what you see coming up.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy. Thank you to the chamber, and thank you everyone for coming. This is my favorite part, actually the most important part in service, talking with you all, sharing our priorities, and most importantly, hearing from you, your concerns and your issues. So our office, we have pre-filed or filed about 12 bills of the 400 so that Andy mentioned. We are really kind of focusing on a wide range of issue areas. And so I would love to talk about really briefly, 5 priorities of those 11 or 12 bills. The first one is military assistance, veterans assistant. So as a veteran myself, we're really focusing on how do we help those who have transitioned out of the military from active duty, the Guard, or reserves. Last session, our office was successful in supporting and helping ensure that Island County has a veteran service officer, a VSO. A VSO is a critical component to ensuring that all of our veterans have access to filing benefit claims for the VA, and they really kind of shepherd those folks to ensure that they get the benefits they deserve, whether it's housing or medical or utilities or food assistance. So very, very critical component of ensuring that veterans are supported. So this year, with the success of getting funding for a VSO in Island County, our office is dedicated to ensuring that it's a statewide program. So we're working with the Department of Veteran Affairs to ensure that every veteran across every county, every corner of the state has access to a VSO and the access to their benefits they deserve. Second, we're looking at healthcare in terms of the workforce gaps that we see. As vice chair of the Education Committee, K through 12, we're looking at a nexus between how do we support our providers currently, and how do we instill upon or create a new young generation of healthcare professionals. So currently, we are working on a new program, an entirely new high school program called Core Plus Allied Healthcare. This program will focus on 3 major areas. First, long-term care, home care aides or caregivers. 2, we're looking at sports medicine or physical therapy. And 3, we're looking at medical assistance or CNA. Those are the 3 priority areas we're looking forward to really instilling this kind of new idea among young high schoolers that you can serve in these healthcare professions. And hopefully, as we develop this program, they can even be certified in some areas as well. So really a new generation of healthcare workers. Third, we are focusing on helping law enforcement, ensuring that our police officers have the resources and tools they need. And we see across our state a staffing shortage among police departments across our state, which creates a significant concern in terms of crime prevention. So last year, we submitted a bill, and this year we will forward it, hopefully for passage, where police departments are provided discretion to hire part-time individuals as well. So that means, new mothers or newly retired professionals, they can continue service and who can't really do the full-time law enforcement duties, they can be hired part-time. So those who really have that public service sentiment, that mentality, they can continue service and ensuring they protect us. Fourth, really kind of focusing on how do we help our farmers and farm workers. And so we submitted a bill, we pre-filed it about a week ago, which provides tax incentives for farmers who are already involved in USDA conservation programs. That means farmers that are already, doing regenerative agricultural practices or really helping out, healthy land ownership, farming practices. We want to reward them. We want to ensure that these farmers are able to continue farming, so they'll get a tax incentive. So we're excited for that. And finally, number 5, artificial intelligence. So I'm sure a lot of us have really seen kind of the development of artificial intelligence across the media. And so my hope is that as a legislature, as a state, we can really drive the narrative to ensure that this advanced technology helps us, not harm us. So our bill, which we pre-filed about 2 weeks ago, getting a lot of good attention, it really focuses on what is ethical artificial intelligence. And so we, through a lot of stakeholdering and research and talking with folks, we landed on 4 major tenets: privacy and data security, inclusion and accessibility so everyone can use this new technology, non-discrimination, unbiased use of AI, and finally, transparency and traceability so that we know how is this artificial intelligence being developed. So those are just 5 of the many bills that we pre-filed. And again, that really ranges across so many different areas. And I'm really, really excited to ensure that while this is a short session, it doesn't mean that we're doing less work. It just means it's going to be a little bit quicker and more compressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Shavers. Let's stick with the 10th district and go to Representative Dave Paul.
Thank you, Andy. So nice to see everybody this evening, and I want to thank my colleagues for joining us. Our delegation, I think, really represents the greatness of our state. We've got a swing district, a true swing district, one of the only 2 districts that's represented by both Democrats and Republicans in the 10th. We've got a fairly conservative district with the 39th and a fairly liberal district with the 40th. And despite those ideological or partisan differences, I think the 9 of us really like and respect each other and try to work together to find common ground. And I think we might disagree on times about specific policies, but I'm really impressed. I want to thank my colleagues for that. I think that we try to model, the 9 of us, the civility we hope that the rest of the state and our nation should be modeling as we're doing our work. So looking at the short session, I'm struck that the biggest things we have to deal with are still the issues that for those of us who have been here, some of us have been here 5 years or 6 years, addiction, mental health, housing are still incredibly important issues that are not going to get solved in this session. We have not solved them in the last 5 years. They're national problems that are really challenging to deal with. We're going to continue to try to make progress on all 3 of those, and be looking for innovative solutions in ways of partnering both the government, the public, and private partnerships to help solve these issues. There's no magic wand or silver bullet for any of those. I'll add transportation. We had a terrific transportation package last year, the Move Ahead Washington package. And for the first time in a long time, we've had a much greater emphasis on transportation and especially on the maintenance and preservation of our roadways and bridges and ferries. And this past year has been really challenging. After the session got done, we started getting some of those cost updates from the Department of Transportation, and these projects are costing much more than we thought when we left in April when we finished the long session. So we'll be coming back. I'm vice chair of the Transportation Committee and asked for that because of the importance for our district. We'll be coming back and trying to keep those projects moving and finish those and get those projects completed. They're just vitally important for our district. Ferries is really important for the 10th district, but also for the 40th. And we've got to make progress on our ferry system. We are down 6 vessels below what we need to run the ferry system the way it should be run. I'm going to continue to champion that we need to be building after we've got in the budget 5 new ferries coming. It's going to take us a while. They had to go back out to contract. But once we get those built, it's our job to make sure that we've got a ferry built every other year, because we need 25 ferries and they last 50 years. It's a pretty simple math equation that if we build a ferry every other year, we won't be in the problem we're in right now. So in terms of really big picture items, those are what I'm focusing on for the upcoming session. I'm going to continue the work on career and technical education that I think is really important to help make sure our young people are connected with family wage jobs. And we did some really great work to help bring together high school educators and community college instructors and our skills centers and our employers to figure out what those pathways can look like. And we're going to keep working on that this upcoming year and then have some model legislation to bring that statewide in the 25 session. And then just a couple of quick updates on some bills I'm working on. I've got a couple of health policy bills. That's a new area for me, but one to help lower the cost of inhalers and EpiPens like we did with insulin. Those are life-saving drugs that have been around for decades, and the costs have gone really astronomical for families, and it's not necessary. And so we're going to try to rein that in like we did with insulin. And also to dovetail on something that Representative Chambers said with helping to support public safety officers. We've got a lot of folks retiring out of law enforcement. We've had chiefs and sheriffs come to us and say, well, what if we can hire some of those folks back until we help fill our ranks again with new cadets. So we've got to be really careful on that, because you can have unintended consequences if you don't do it right. But we're trying to craft a bill that will help piggyback on what Rep. Shavers has started to allow retired officers to come back and work part-time for up to 3 years. But thank you so much for coming, and happy to answer questions later.
Thank you, Representative Paul. Let's go to the 39th District and Representative Carolyn Eslick.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you to the Chambers for sponsoring this tonight. I enjoyed coming up here. We get a chance to meet some folks I hadn't seen for a while and meet some new people, and it's just fun to the fun part of this job. Let me just say that. I am Carolyn Eslick, and I live in Sultan, which is, a few miles down the 39th District. I'm located on the furthest south point of the 39th District, literally. But to be able to represent Skagit County has been a joy for me. We've been able to bring several projects, and specifically the Skagit help me out here. What's the name? The mental health hospital. Thank you. Right. And we're looking at the second phase. Hopefully we can find some money this year to help with that. My committees are Human Services, Family and Child Care. That's one committee. And there are many subcommittees to that. I am on the Youth and Mental Health. I'm also on the strategic plan for the youth and mental health. That's hopefully after 2 years, we'll be able to have some concrete roadways for our youth to be able to follow to get the help that they need. We've been doing a lot of work in that arena. I'm all about prevention, and we're looking at several different before and after school programs and some funding for that. That is, I don't have any bills in that arena, but we certainly are looking for some funding to be able to offer that, because that's a huge part of prevention with our youth. My other committees are capital budget. It's a fun one. It's when we get to bring home the bacon, so to speak. And then I also since last year, been put on education committee. It really partners well with human services. And I find that I spend a lot of time in both of those arenas. One of my very first bills this year was House Bill, I dropped it really early, December 6th, is House Bill 1891. And it is to maintain children's safety when their parent is dealing with substance abuse. Specifically, we have had some real problems with foster care and the kids going back too early with their birth parents, and we have lost some of our children in that respect. So be able to really look at that carefully and make sure that our birth parents are ready for their children to come home. Hopefully this will shine the light on that issue. I'm also finishing up some bills that I had last year. I find that when in the past, when we issued bills and they actually are 98-0 in the House, they sometimes come up with complications in the departments that they're going to. And one of them was my conditional scholarship for behavioral health careers. It was unanimous to pass through, and this is all about getting more people in the pipeline because we all know we need more mental health counselors. Well, it came about that the Washington Health Corps, who was in charge of conditional scholarships, didn't have the availability because of statute to be able to issue the grants to the mental health field. So I'm changing that. It's a very simple little tweak in an RCW. And actually it gets a hearing on Tuesday. So I'm excited to have that happen so quickly. It's not a normal situation. It just is, everybody understands the urgency and the crisis, I think, that we're in with that area. I also am helping some the electrical apprenticeship businesses. I have House Bill 2159 for small electrical companies of 20 employees or less, so that they will be able to use their hours like they had been in the past, instead of going to apprentice schools for 2 years, because it has really had a hardship for our very small electrical businesses. So that's one I just dropped yesterday. I am partnering with Representative Callan on House Bill 2124. It's expanding access to childcare and early learning programs. So I'm touching all of the basic issues, and you know, one of my colleagues says that he really believes that more bills is not necessarily a good thing. More laws is not necessarily a good thing. I get that. But I also know that when you see that there's a loophole, a problem, we better fix it. And that's our job. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Representative Lackenoff.
Well, hang on. We're going to stick with the 39th because Senator Keith Wagner is joining us via Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe.
Sorry for the confusion. I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to get in tonight because I'm down in Olympia working on some things, getting ready for session. So it's a pleasure to be here. I want to talk about some bills that I have upcoming, but first I want to remind people they can check on the Washington State Legislature website every bill that we are either the primary sponsors of or the secondary sponsor of, a co-sponsor of. And I encourage you to do that. So the bills from last session that did not get through to the governor's desk, all of those will be automatically refiled. I was fortunate to have the most bills in my chamber for a minority member, 6 bills that got to the finish line. So had about 20 total and 6 made it. So the other 14 are going to be coming back to you. But because we're talking to chambers and local government, I wanted to focus my attention there. And this morning, Senator Loveland, who's on this call, and I were on the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, where we heard about marijuana revenues. And we got our final report from our committee staff. I've been working on a bill that I think is very important to local government, because when marijuana was legalized in the state, municipalities had to make a decision. Do they want it in their city or do they not want it in their city? And we made that decision, most of us, based on what we thought was going to be a windfall, money that we could use so we wouldn't have to raise property taxes, we wouldn't have to raise utility taxes on people, money that was going to fund local government, safety, and health. Now, people may disagree, but I think we shortchanged our cities in the long run. So I have a bill that I've been working on, and Senator Lovelet is a co-sponsor from last year that would double the amount that goes back to local government. And I think that is a very fair thing to do. Another angle that I have taken to address that is the liquor tax that was taken from cities when the state got out of the business of selling alcohol. Local government lost all of that revenue. And there's no reason we can't turn that money back to the way it was before. About half of it was given to local government, 10% to counties, 40% to municipalities. So those are two things that I'm working on so that our constituents won't have to have increased taxes, because the price of everything is going up right now, and that's for local government too. Representative Paul alluded to it in the transportation sense, and he's absolutely right. Representative Eslick talked about the Skagit Behavioral Health Center. Well, we brought back, I think, 1.7 million in the last session for phase 2 of that facility. It's not enough all of a sudden because of the increased cost of construction. It's not enough by almost 3 times now. So we have to go back to the legislature and figure out how we're going to cover these costs to build these important facilities. There was another one at Evergreen down in Monroe, a project that was allocated several $millions, and they've just turned the money back to the state because it's become so expensive they can't go forward with the project. It is my hope that I can work together with my colleagues here to move that money that was turned back, bring it up to Skagit, and get phase 2 taken care of. I sit on the Ways and Means Committee, the Law and Justice Committee, and Ag and Natural Resources, which I think are all very important things to our district. And I'm also the minority whip. So I don't think I'm going to be able to stick around too long. I'll hang as long as I can. I've got another appointment coming up. I appreciate being here. You can always reach our office either by phone or send us an email. And if it's a bona fide constituent, and I'll make this point specific, you know, put Cedar Woolley or put the name of your city in the subject line, because our staff has hundreds and hundreds to sort through, and some of them are just essentially spam, the same message over and over and over from anywhere in the state. But we want to take care of our local folks in our local counties, and that means you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Wagner. Let's now go to the 40th District and Representative Lekanoff. Let's go with you, please.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you all. It's good to be here. I'm Representative Lekanoff out of the 40th Legislative District. You know, I think I might be one of the senior legislators, and I've only been here 6 years, you know, but I've called Skagit home for almost 20 years. You know, Skagit raised my daughter, Emma. She's 20 years old and attending Western, and a lot of the value systems that are in the Skagit that I come from for, gosh, I think I'm going to be 52, you guys. 53. I say this because I come from a small town in Southeast Alaska where community means everything, right? It doesn't matter what you look like, what color your skin is, where you come from. You all work together. You all come from a real community. And that's what drew me to the Skagit. And that's what the values that the Skagit has brought are instilled in my daughter, Emma. My entire 40th District agenda for this year is focused on the opioid and fentanyl crisis, right? Many of you have known me to work on salmon, to work on agriculture, to work on water, to work on public safety, etc. But we're learning that we're going to lose 2 generations from the opioid and fentanyl crisis. Many of you sit next to each other, and addiction is, whether it's AUD, SUD, mental behavioral health, suicide, is within every one of the closed doors in our families and at every kitchen table. We all have dirt on our shoes. I can't fight for salmon, can't fight for climate change, and I can't fight for workforce if I'm going to be losing 2 generations. And I think all of you feel that hurt today. I get to work with some of the best legislators in the 10th, the 40th, and the 42nd, the 39th. This year, my bills and my provisos are going to be focused on legislation that's going to be bringing local, tribal, state, and federal governments together. One of the provisos that I think all of you will appreciate, especially those of you in elected positions, local government is already leading the way. Local government is already leading the way on fighting the opioid and fentanyl crisis, the SUD, the AUD, the mental behavior health. Your North Star program here in the Skagit County, it is a model that could be used across the nation. I'm so happy to be sitting with Representative Eslick and my two colleagues here from the 10th, sitting and learning about the North Star, bringing the funding home to fund the next half of that as a shared priority. I think you will see across the 40th, the 10th, and the 39th in my own district, in my own office. I'll share this. When you're dealing with the prevention of opioid and fentanyl crisis, there's three different areas you're looking at. Prevention. We're funding, and I have to say, congratulations to the Skagit because you saved the drug task forces in Washington State. It was Skagit County, it was the mayors standing up and saying, we need our 9 drug task forces fully funded. And I'm sorry, the Department of Commerce, you cannot take the $3.1 million of JAG funding and allocate it towards pilot projects. You must keep the drug task forces fully funded to remove all of the large drug cartel drugs off of the streets. It was your county that raised the voice to the governor and to the county and to the Department of Commerce. So not only are we supporting the governor's budget, which we pushed to fully fund them, but we're also funding to remove the money out of commerce, put it underneath the Washington State Sheriff's and Police Task Force, and fully funding WASPIC to be able to manage and oversee drug task forces in the state, because we can no longer allow the drugs that are happening on our streets and the millions of pills that we're finding. And our drug task forces are the #1 model that needs to be able to accomplish it. And it is the work that came from here in our community. Working on prevention, we're also fully funding and coordinated with the governor's budget to create a public campaign on the opioid and fentanyl crisis. And also there will be a bill coming its way to provide support to K-12 schools so we can upgrade the health PE class to be able to include opioid and fentanyl. Many of you might not know that the early education classes for PE only include harmful drugs. It has not been updated to include the opioid and fentanyl crisis that's impacting our community. So having that done adequately is also going to be a bill that we're working on this year that I was happy to collaborate on. We also know that the North Star has the facilities that I talked about earlier to fund. Many of you may not know that 21 tribes across the state will have full standing wellness and recovery programs. Many of you may not know that 80% of who they're healing is non-native. The other 20% are native. This is your brothers, your sisters, your family, your coworkers, your bankers, your surgeons, etc. We here in the Skagit were the first model across the state to do that with Degwallich, thanks to the collaboration of Skagit County, thanks to the collaboration of the cities and governments. If you average 300 people going through Degwallich down there in the last 8 years, that's over my little math sheet here. It's over 2,000 Skagitonians that we've saved. And that is Skagit showing the rest of the state that we can do it right when we can better work together. There is funding coming through the settlement, the opioid settlement funds that's coming for the state. We're going to make sure North Star is part of that. We're also going to make sure that the Degwallich Center just down a ways, not 2 miles away, is also going to receive their funding to continue to expand the work that they're doing. I want to also touch a little bit. Some of the facilities and funding that's going to be allocated for the opioid and fentanyl, many of you may not know. There is very few beds. Caroline, you might help because she's a champion on this world of social services and helping our children in early education. 45 beds for our youth who are facing opioid and fentanyl, SUD, AUD, mental behavior health crisis. 45 beds located in Spokane. The Healing Lodge of the Seven Nations since 1987 has been the predominant stable facility that provides those services. We're looking at providing an additional $5 million to expand it and to provide a model program similar to the prevention, medicated detox, aftercare recovery here on the west side as well. Our youth are our most important to us and we don't have enough being done for our youth to be able to heal them, to be able to take care of them. But the interesting part is, where do they go? Where do they go when they turn 18? Because this is only 13 to 17-year-olds. We're also working on a collaborative program. Again, these are all Washington youth, right? All of them, all colors, all races, all demographics who are addicted. We are looking at, and I have to compliment Carolyn Eslick also again, House Bill 1929, she is looking for ages 18 to 24 to be able to receive housing and aftercare. I'm adding on to that and saying, not only will we provide housing for these youth who are coming out, because not all of them can go home, right? Between the ages of 13 to 17, a wing for those. Those who are 18 to 24, let's provide opportunities through existing scholarship funds, not new ones, to put these kids through school so they can have the life that they deserve, right? I go back to the values that you all taught Emma, right? You take care of your own, you take care of those around you, you stand them up. And why it's so important for all of you out here? If we lose 2 generations, you have no workforce. You have no workforce, you have no youth. Who's going to be sitting in our seats making decisions? Who's going to be sitting in the Chamber of Commerce, and who's going to be sitting as you as entrepreneurs and those sitting in elected positions? So there's a lot of work to be done. The last part, and I'll be really quick. Thank you for giving me a little bit of time. Early childhood is really important. We're working on looking with unions, entrepreneurs, hospitals, etc. The early child care needs for those who are in non-standard hours is astronomical. Who's watching the surgeon's children, EMT's children, paramedics, firefighters, police, those who are cleaning at night, the janitor, the services? Who's on the refineries? Who's watching those children in the after hours when we don't have early child care? So we'll be collaborating and addressing that. The first pilot project I'm hoping to do is here in the Skagit, just off of Highway 20. Couple different things going on, but just a little busy. Thank you.
Just a few things. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. We're going to stay in the 40th and go to Senator Liz Lovelet on Zoom, please.
Hi there, everybody. Liz Lovelet. I'm in Anacortes. I'm a 5th generation Skagitonian and very glad to be here with you all tonight. I serve as chair of the Local Government, Land Use and Tribal Affairs Committee in the Senate. I'm also vice chair of Energy, Environment, and Technology, and I serve on the Transportation Committee, where I co-chair as the Senate lead for the Ferry Legislator Caucus with my colleagues here, Representative Dave Paul and Alex Rammel. So many things come up and only 60 days to solve these problems. So I'm glad to see some familiar faces. I see Ron McHenry here, who we've worked with so many times through the years on early childhood issues and all the issues with Boys and Girls Club and making sure that kids have access to good quality care. You know, I'm running a number of bills, as Senator Wagner said. Look them up on our website, you know, where I'm covering everything from working with Representative Rammel on geothermal energy to working on extended producer responsibility for the packaging on our products to environmental justice issues. But what I'm mostly here to listen, so I'm going to keep this real brief and just say we are super lucky here. This will be my 6th rodeo here in the Senate. And we are super lucky because we actually work really well together. Senator Wagner and Senator Mazzal are on Ways and Means. I serve on Transportation. We work on making sure that things that we need to bring home for the Skagit are happening. And I am really lucky to have such incredible colleagues who also support the needs of small businesses and making sure that we're taking care of public safety. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're here to just protect our transportation investments. Our transportation budget is rather anemic as we try to figure out how to transition from being reliant on gas tax revenues to figuring out if we're going to have a road usage charge. We have this incredible opportunity to use Climate Commitment Act dollars to invest in the next generation of technology, whether it's electrified ferries, like the money that we brought home from the Guimas Ferry, to hydrogen technology, leveraging those funds to bring in federal dollars. We also know that our schools are hurting. When we redressed the levy formula in 2019, it left a lot of the schools in our areas hurting and having budget deficits. And if we're not investing in our kids, we're not investing in the future. So I'm excited to see a spate of bills that are coming out to help address the levy issues and the formula restrictions that are impacting negatively the schools in the 40th district. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm here to listen. I want to know what you guys are up to. I want to know what you guys need. I read through your list of concerns. I need to just make sure that I'm addressing all of them. But again, this team between all of these districts, the 10th, the 40th, 39th, we are really working together to make sure that we are taking care of the Skagit, and just want to make sure you know there's no wrong door. If you feel more comfortable going to Senator Wagoner than you feel coming to me, go to Senator Wagoner. Vice versa. We have a no wrong door policy for all of us because we want to make sure that your needs are being covered. We can't always make you happy, but we are definitely here to listen and to solve problems. And the other big thing that I'm super excited about is we continue to have remote testimony. That is one of the most awesome things that came out of the COVID pandemic, is that now from the comfort of your home and your pajama pants, if you feel like it, you can Zoom in and make sure that you're letting us know about all of the issues that matter to you. Are we handling your budget and policy concerns? Do you love or hate a policy that we're considering in our committees? We're trying to cover a broad number of categories and policies. We welcome your opinion and feedback, and we're here to listen. So thank you for having us here, and looking forward to hearing what my colleagues are working on.
Thank you, Senator Loveland, very much. Appreciate it. And sticking with the 40th, also by Zoom, Representative Alex Rammel.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. Appreciate it. Thanks for hosting this each year. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there in person. Last year, one of the things that came up at this meeting a year ago was urgent need for funding for our local food banks. And that was the first time I'd heard about it, was at this meeting a year ago, and happy to report that not only were we able to get that money into the budget, but we were actually able to move that as an early agenda item, in part because of what we heard, which is the money's going to run out and the shelves are going to be empty in March. And so we can't wait for the next annual budget to come out in July. So just reiterating the importance of this, and that, you know, as Liz said, our doors are always open, and we really are able to do these jobs better with voices from folks here. The good thing about going last is that the long list of things I wanted to make sure we got a chance to talk about have mostly all been covered. I'll just note a couple of things that we've already mentioned, but a few more details on. You know, housing has to remain one of our top priorities as a legislature. I was here late today because starting to plan what our first early action agenda items are going to be for moving things off the House floor as early as next week. And among our priorities are, our top priorities are things that are going to increase the supply of available housing. Last year we did a lot there. We've got a lot more to do, and it's important for us not to take the eye off the ball. Would mention, I think Rep. Lowe may not be here today, but did want to mention that he is, you know, along the lines of bipartisan collaboration, Skagit County and Whatcom County came to us and asked for legislation to support development of workforce housing and to put some more tools in their toolbox to be able to do that. Sam's going to be the prime sponsor on that bill and jumped on quickly to be second sponsor. And we expect, I think we got the word yesterday that there'll be an early hearing on that bill. Bipartisanship does help us move some of those priorities along, especially in a short session like this one. Other housing policies, you know, I think there is more that we need to do beyond just increasing supply. Unfortunately, we're 250,000 homes short in Washington State, and it's going to take a while to fill that deficit. In the meantime, market rate housing is not going to be able to supply all of the housing we need for senior citizens, for our elders, for folks experiencing developmental disabilities, and folks in addiction and recovery. We need to support permanently supportive housing for many of those populations. And we don't have dedicated revenue for that in Washington State. It's a fight every 2 years. Can we put money into the capital budget to continue to support those partnerships? I believe we ought to have dedicated revenue for that. And I'm eager to support Representative Berg's proposal for real estate transfer tax, which would reduce the real estate excise tax on most people, most transactions in Washington. Any property sold less than $3 million, taxes would go down. Properties over $3 million, the transfer tax would go up a little bit. And that difference would give us dedicated revenue that would allow us to build supportive housing to meet that urgent need that I think we all can see, and we certainly hear from folks like our partners at North Star. In addition, we also need to stabilize rents. More than half of people in Washington state don't own their own home, they're renters. I'm fortunate enough to own the condo I'm talking to you from now. I know what my mortgage payment is going to be next year and the year after that. And I believe that tenants deserve similar stability in their lives. There's a lot of details to work out on that. And Representative Emily Alvarado and Senator Yasmin Trudeau are bringing forward legislation. I think it's critically important that we pass that. Folks are experiencing rent increases that are driving them out of our communities right now. And we have to address that this coming year. I will also just mention briefly, Climate Commitment Act. I've been working on a number of pieces of legislation that will continue to put that important source of revenue to work, making sure that that money's coming back to our communities, helping lower energy costs for homeowners, for small businesses, for tenants. And as Senator Loveland mentioned, we're also working on exciting ways to bring about some of the clean energy opportunities of the future, like geothermal electricity. Tons of opportunity there. I'm super excited to see us moving forward on that. And so I'll pause there. I think most of the other priorities on my list have been covered, but looking forward to answering questions. And we'll just reiterate the important message that, we really do these jobs better with your voices in the room, whether that's emails to us, participating, as Liz said, remotely in our committee process. Let us know what's working. Let us know what's not working. Your voices are an important part of this process. And I think I speak for all of us. Our doors are wide open and we're looking to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Senator Representative Rammel. Changed your position. Sorry about that. Time to take questions from the audience and on Zoom. I know there's some people that would like to ask a question or make a point. Come on up here. I'd like you to come to the microphone. I know you don't want to be first, but let's do this though in the interest of the civility that we've discussed and maybe yeah, I think I made my point. You can address it to everyone, or I suppose if you want to ask somebody specifically, that's okay too. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Yes, thank you guys, first of all, for all being here. Your job is definitely one that isn't thanked enough. I do have a question. We've all seen the impacts of the cap and trade policies that have impacted our fuel expenses this past year. And I know in talking with some of the folks that are in the refining business, as well as some other folks that are in the distribution, they really feel that the original formula was kind of flawed on how this was done. And, it's pretty evident because it's almost 2 times the amount of money that was projected to come in. I think I heard a number close to 2.5 billion that's come in for this past fiscal year. For this past year with this in. Would you support reevaluating and tweaking it to where it is not as costly to the citizens and more importantly to the businesses that depend upon fuels to operate?
Order of operations, how do you want us to jump in?
Liz, you're first.
Okay. This is a complex program, clearly. However, there has been a lot of evidence that the oil companies themselves are taking in a record profit at a time when we are having regulatory changes. We have allowed for a separate allowance market in order to help regulate these things. I have an incredible report of CCA compliance that I'm happy to share with you. But at the end of the day, we have a lot of industries that I think really want to do the right thing. They're in an economy-wide array of businesses that are participating in the Climate Commitment Act, and they are allowing us to have investments that otherwise would never be realized. For example, the Guaymas Ferry. For example, some of these investments in the state ferry system that we've had, some of these transportation projects that we rely on. So I think we have to take a very careful look at the difference between what the regulatory compliance cost is and where we are in terms of the kind of the corporate schemes that tend to happen when we're having regulatory implementation. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I think there's some good, some bad, but we're working on linkage. We're working on allowance credits. We have given as many off-ramps as possible. We have had a very wide listening session for all of our businesses that are involved in this and tried to find as many caveats and off-ramps that we can. But at the end of the day, we have a climate crisis that we have to address. And this is the mechanism that we have decided to use.
Other thoughts?
Yeah,
I should have said Senator Lovelit. Apologize.
I'll jump in. So Lance, I think what makes this even more challenging is that there is, I believe that the initiative has been certified. And so we're also trying to figure out if we can pass legislation to help address some of those concerns with the CCA, the Climate Commitment Act. If we can, I'm not an attorney here, but if we can legally do that, and if that then becomes the alternative that has to be on the ballot as well, and it's complicated. So we're trying to figure out, talking to the attorneys, people smarter than I am, about what we can do and how complicated that is on the ballot. And so that initiative is complicating our work to help address some of these concerns.
I thank you for that. And
Yep.
Alex, I'd love to hear from you. See your hand.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I would say I fully agree with my colleagues. The Climate Commitment Act is working as intended. It is helping us drive down the emissions that are causing global warming. It's making Washington a national leader. And when we look at things like our ability to go after the federal money for the hydrogen hub, that's going to be a huge investment in Washington, more than $1 billion in public money, matched many times over by private investment. Those kinds of things are all going to be opportunities unlocked through the Climate Commitment Act. It's good work, and I stand behind it. Could we tweak things like enabling linkage with California and Quebec so that there's a bigger market? I think that's good public policy if we can get it right. But to Dave's point, the unfortunate initiative that I think is would head us in the wrong direction has made that complicated because at the very least, what it would likely do is mean that we have to try and put linkage of the Climate Commitment Act on the ballot. And I can't even imagine what the communications campaign for that would look like. So I think ultimately any kind of movement in that direction is likely to be on hold until after, until we're able to come back a year from now.
Great. I have two follow-up quick questions in regards to the CCA. One is, would you as legislators support a detailed analysis on both your utility bills and or at the pump in regards to what the impact is of this regulation? And number two, can there be action taken to enhance our, the discount, I can't recall what it is, but for our farmers and for our trucking industry that never came forward?
Yeah, I'll jump in and let others follow. But I think the answer, the second piece of the question, the The exemption that was intended
Thank you.
for the agricultural industry, they're basically dyed fuels. That was not passed through properly at the beginning. And there's finger pointing. Is that Department of Ecology? Is that the fuel distributors? Is that the refiners that didn't do that the right way? My understanding is that that has been resolved, and several of the refiners have committed to making a even reimbursing some of the farmers who were overcharged at the beginning. With regards to transparency about costs, I'm absolutely in favor of that. And I think we need to make sure that we're also asking the companies that are passing those costs, that are saying that costs are attributing costs to the Climate Commitment Act, that there's integrity in those calculations. I will just remind everybody that in January of last year, some companies started putting a fuel surcharge of 40 or 50 cents a gallon on gasoline. Well, the first auction happened in February, so they didn't know what the price was going to be. But we ended up, folks were told that that's attributed to the CCA. And I just, the math doesn't, and the timeline on that doesn't track. So I absolutely support making sure we've got transparency in the pricing around that when folks are told that a cost is because of the Climate Commitment.
Transparency on both sides is great. Thank you. I know there'll be other responses.
Senator Wagner.
Yeah, I wanted to take a little bit of a different tack. You know, I have strong feelings about the Climate Commitment Act, but I'll try and temper that. I think that a lot of what we're seeing happen was predictable and foreseeable. But to answer your question directly, the legislature understands it's not perfect, and we are going to go back and work together to try and fix the things that were wrong, because we are where we are right now. And I won't talk about other things that are going on because I think we may be prohibited for speaking about some of this stuff. But we're committed to work together to go back and fix what's wrong. We may not agree on whether this was the right path or the wrong path, but it was the path that passed through the legislature, and that's the reality that we have to deal with right now.
Thank you. We will move on from that for the moment. We do have some questions online. Which may actually be asked. I would sure like to hear from Ron McHenry.
Yeah, I didn't know that the audience would be able to hear. So I just have a kind of a quick question. I guess it's more of a perception, temperature taking. You know, there was a series of roundabouts scheduled to be placed on Highway 20 between Burlington and Cedar-Woolley. I live off of Gardner Road in Burlington, and it's a very dangerous intersection. So I was really excited about those being built this summer, or last summer actually, and they didn't happen. So I had been meeting with Representative Lowe. He looked into it for me with WashDOT, and the response was it was delayed due to a lack of staffing. And it's not the only project that's been delayed due to a lack of staffing. And so my concern is, you know, we've got these things that have already been approved and somewhat funded. And then we've got things like the ferries that we all know is going to cost more than what we want them to. How is it going to be handled when WashDOT comes and has big projects this year when they haven't finished what's already been funded and probably will have to come back for more money on?
No new projects this year. Let's just start with that. No new projects this year.
I support that. Thank you.
I think Dave alluded to this already, but unfortunately, the staffing isn't going to be our biggest problem in getting transportation projects done in the coming year. Inflation has driven up the price tag of a lot of things, and we're we're going to have to push pause on some things that we had hoped to get done sooner.
If I can add real fast that one of the other things that is one of the other solutions to the problem is to work with local, county and city officials and see if they have the capacity to manage the projects. And some of our local partners are very excited for that. And I can't speak, Ron, nice to see you. But I can't speak to that specific project, but I know in my hometown of Oak Harbor, city of Oak Harbor is chomping at the bit to be able to manage the project of the 3 roundabouts that are planned on Highway 20 there. And the Joint Transportation Commission met today to talk about ways of helping to standardize that process. About 40% of our local cities and counties are very interested in managing those projects, and that would take that management staffing burden off the Department of Transportation and free up those projects to move forward.
Representative Eslick.
Thank you. Well, today they had legislative information day, and if you go on to TVW, you can hear it. Senator Leas was on, who is chair of transportation, and Representative Phi from the House, and they both agreed no new projects, and they were going to make sure that the projects that are in the queue will be handled first. So that was good to hear, right? So you can hear it too. Just go on to TVW. If you're not familiar with that, you can find it on your TV, your smart TV.
Andy, thank you. You know, I appreciate my transportation experts, especially Dave Paul as vice chair coming out of there. I appreciate that. You know, we talked about inflation, right? Skagit County's, and let's talk about inflation, the cost of culverts. I know that's a tough one, but guess who led the way in culverts and getting their culverts accomplished and completed? That's Skagit County. Skagit County has a majority of their county culverts already completed and done. I think you all even beat the state in our county in getting those accomplished. So I applaud Skagit County in doing that. But I do want to say that with the increase of culverts at 2.9 billion up to almost 7 billion due to inflation, that's going to impact our state budget. That caused a red flag for us on any projects because of the state culvert passing. But the part that I wanted to talk about also is not only the increase in inflation, but the need of workforce. We don't have enough workforce in the state of Washington to accomplish a majority of our infrastructure needs that we're having coming our way. We've been working hard at removing barriers within the workforce development and with hiring workforce to be able to create opportunities to build the workforce to be able to implement these infrastructure projects that are needed across Washington state. One of the most promising partnerships that we've seen is working with our Washington delegation at the congressional level on the Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Act, which local government can apply to get funding for, and that state is collaborating with. So good question, good answers. Let's try and put some people to work and get our infrastructure up and running the way we need to, not on only the state legislatures back, but rely on the congressional outreach and our relationships there. And thank you to local government for stepping up always and doing the right thing.
Thank you. Another question online, Kathy Ream, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm Kathy Ream and I live in Cedar-Woolley, and my family and I, along with a great many other wonderful folks that we know, are very involved with the League of Women Voters. We're out there all the time working to register people, encourage them to engage. How I so wish that they would listen to this conversation today, because the belief is that neither party is willing to work to resolve problems. And that cynicism is really worrisome, I know, for all of you, and for me as a longtime teacher as well. So my question to each of you, and we may not have time to answer it personally, but is what can we be doing to make sure that the publicity that everybody's putting out talks also about the cooperation that you're doing with one another and across the aisle, as well as the wonderful things that you're doing within the party structure. How can we make sure that that information is out there in a more obvious and acceptable way.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I think that was one of the most impressive things that I noticed when I went down in 2018 was most of the bills that come to the floor have been negotiated and they're 98-0 on the House side. And I think that the best thing that we can do is we all send out newsletters and we can include that comment, just like you were talking about, make sure that everyone knows that we are working together. We don't either side give up our basic principles, and that's when you would see the divide, but 95%, I would say, are bills that we have negotiated together to make sure it was the best for everyone, for all our citizens. Thank you.
Representative Lakanov.
I was going to tease and say, Andy, you could drop a press release tomorrow about how collective the 10th and the 40th, the 42nd, and every one of our county and elected officials could post it on theirs and send it out. Then we could say the 10th, the 40th, the 39th, and gosh, guys, we'll bring the 42nd too. How the whole North End has worked collectively together, which empowers us. When we work together in the 10th, the 40th, and the 42nd, and the 39th, it brings more money home to us. It brings more policy roles to us. It brings us stepping into leadership roles as well. So the better we work together, the more effective we are down in Olympia.
We will send that press release. Commissioner Peter Browning, please.
Hey, real quick, if I could just tag on to that. We'll also say there's a structural challenge in the way people get information, which is, there's sort of an outrage machine. When things are upsetting, we're more likely to click on it. And so that means the things where we don't agree are the things that get the most attention in the media and even more so on social media. In case it's helpful and in case anybody is excited about listening to another podcast, Mark Clicker and I, Republican representative from Walla Walla, recorded a podcast over the summer with a group called the Common Ground Committee, and talking about bipartisanship and talking about a couple of policy areas that we worked on together. I put it in the chat. If you're interested in sharing it around, would love to get more ears listening to it. And I think that committee is doing a good job of sharing that, that general, the need for more discussion about when we're working together and how well that does work. Thanks.
Representative Shavers.
Thank you. Bouncing off of Representative Rammel's comments, providing information, how we do it, in what format is extremely important in getting people involved in our political system. In my office is focusing on how do we get information out in terms of voting and election material. So we have pre-filed a bill, and the first hearing will be actually on Wednesday, which provides greater translation for voting material. So that includes ballots, includes voter pamphlets and anything else. I think if we can provide more translation services for those who want to be involved, but just feel disenfranchised because of the current barriers that are in existence, I think we can really allow, for example, young people to get more and more involved. My belief is that when you're young and the first time you vote, you will be a lifetime voter. And so why don't we just try to break down those barriers, encourage those young people to vote. And so that whether it's now, whether it's 5 years or even 50 years from now, these folks, we won't be asking this question anymore. Well, everyone will be already involved. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm Peter Browning, County Commissioner for District 2. First of all, I thank you all. It's so nice having you work together, but not just among yourselves. You work well with us. We really appreciate that. The way you work with the local mayors and local county commissioners, it's been very refreshing. It's been very comfortable. I think this is a great place to live in this part of our country, and it really shows in the way we work together. I was recently added to the CRAB board, the County Road Advisory Board. Really an important place for me to be. I feel very strongly about it. I grew up in both between Whatcom and Skagit County, and I really love the way our area works. But I am concerned about the added costs to our things like our culverts for salmon recovery and keeping our roads up to date. And with the increased electric cars, we're seeing more and fewer and fewer tax dollars going to the CRAB advisory or to the road funds. So that may be an option to for the man who talked earlier, if we're not going to redirect the money back to the people, that'd be a great place to redirect some of that money to our roads so that we can keep our roads up. It's once they start to deteriorate, when you talk to our road people, they're a whole lot harder to fix than they are to just maintain, and very much more costly. But thank you. Oh, and go Huskies.
Oh, I want to jump in on this one because I love crab and I work with them all the time. So one of the challenges that we have is that in the majority party, there's only a handful of rural Democrats. And so for us to help like translate to our colleagues, the incredible importance of making sure that some of these county areas are being fully capitalized is a lot of water to carry. And we're working on it. And we have good support from our ranking members and from people that are letting us know that like we can't leave our rural areas behind. And I've seen some of these crab projects. A lot of us participated in a tour this last interim that was really informative. I mean, I think there are some room to adjust the gas tax proceeds and how they could potentially be supporting CRAB. I mean, CRAB is another organization that helps support our rural county ferries. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to figure out the math and the calculus on how we transition away from the gas tax and into some kind of road usage charge, because we see this problem in front of us where we are going to be continuing to see a decline in gas tax revenue. What are we doing to make sure that people that are using our roads are paying to participate in the fact that we have really good infrastructure in most places in the state? So really working on socializing the road usage charge, making sure that, you know, people understand this is not like a government overreach trying to know all the places that you're driving, but instead we're trying to figure out how to calculate, you know, how much you're using the roads, how to account for the people that are coming from out of state that are using our roads as well, and how we can make sure to capture some of those proceeds. So I'm really hopeful that we have so many smart people that are working in the transportation space on this issue so that we can make sure that our county road programs are being fully capitalized and that we are taking account for future proofing some of these technologies that are coming online in the transportation space.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, thank you and good evening, and Representative Rammel, the food banks are back. I had the pleasure to have a discussion the last time we did this about some of the needs for the local food banks. My name is Steve Fox. I'm the director of Skagit Valley Neighbors in Need Food Bank, but tonight I'm here in the capacity as the president of Skagit Valley Food Bank Association, representing all the food banks. One of the words that I've heard come up about 15, 20 times tonight was inflation. And if you shop at the grocery stores, you know what inflation is like. We're dealing with an inordinate amount of clients coming our way now. If you have the chance to look at the handout that I gave you, everybody's numbers are sky high, anywhere from 30 to 50% increase in the amount of clients coming to see us, which means we need a 30 to 50% increase in the food that we're handing out. We were happy that you were able to fund additional funding for WSDA the last go around. One of the ideas that I'm putting forth in here in the handout that I'm giving you, and for those of you that are online, we will try to email you the handouts. I tried to make it a 1-pager and ended up being like a 1 1/4 pager. But one of the things I would like to maybe start having a conversation around is some state funding for food banks so that we are more sustainable, because I was a judge for the Washington State Department of Agriculture Resiliency Grant. I could not believe the amount of applications that came through, just stacks of them, and stacks of them. And the lion's share of them were from food banks, so we're all experiencing the same things that we're experiencing. I listed a few things in the handout that between, say, Neighbors in Need and Helping Hands, we do all kinds of different programs, but what's not in there are the individual programs that each one of the food banks do. For example, we feed the students in the dorm up at Skagit Valley College. We have 2 mobile food routes. Helping Hands has a mobile food route. A bunch of the other food banks have it. Grocery Rescue, we're in the grocery stores. every day of the week, picking up food that used to be thrown away, processing it and using it to supplement. So what we need is for the legislature to start considering not any kind of handout, but looking at all the different food banks and saying, this problem is not going away. It's just getting worse. The other part of a food bank, pardon me, that people don't understand is we actually put money back into the community. Money that isn't being spent on groceries is allowing people to pay their rent, stay in their homes, pay for their cars, their gas, everything else. So in the long run, it'd be nice if we could end hunger. We're not going to. So what we're looking for is a little bit of help, a long-term conversation about some funding to keep us all sustainable. We've lost a couple of food banks in the last couple of years, and we're not going to be able to replace them. So whatever you could do to help would be greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Steve. I remember you from last year, and this is definitely a priority for our office. I work closely with Aaron Shazinski, who's in Olympia during the session. And we work together. I'm on the military hunger side of things. I'm working with Aaron as well. This was such a priority for us that last year of the 5 bills that we passed, one of them actually pertains entirely to food banks. Using state funds, it provides more flexibility for all food banks in Washington state to utilize those state funds for not just essential food items, but essential non-food items as well, like diapers and hygiene products. And we were very proud to pass that and have the governor sign it. So we're also looking into how do we ensure that our military families aren't going hungry as well. So we're working with both on the federal side as well as the state side to see how can we support our food banks on the military family side. So this is definitely a priority. Actually, right before this, I was at the Children's Museum kind of looking at their program as well. So I really appreciate your advocacy, Steve, and this will continue to be a priority for us.
Well, the other part of this is we're not just looking at you folks for this. We're looking at local governments. We're looking at county governments. We're looking at because the service that we provide, I've also heard about preschool and healthcare and a bunch of other things. We're talking about the most basic need there is, and that is having food on your table. And more importantly, having the food to be able to feed your kids. So what this comes down to is maybe just doing a little different thinking. One of the things that I have in the handout is, although I don't necessarily ever want to be a Canadian, our neighbors to the north have a food bank month. The entire month of December kicks off with Food Bank Day in BC and works its way across all the provinces, where they actually make a big deal and let people know, pardon me, that going to a food bank isn't a bad thing. It used to be when people would go to the food bank, they were in between jobs or they were collecting disability or any number of things. Now it's your next door neighbor that has a job or has 2 jobs. And all they're trying to do is feed their family, but more importantly, stay in their homes, because on top of everything else, Skagit County has a 1% vacancy rate, which just adds to it. If you can't pay your rent, you're in trouble. So whatever you can do to help us out, it would be great. And I thank you very much for being here again and for the time.
And one more thing, sorry.
Kathy?
Oh, go ahead.
And have you guys run a bill that says Washington State is fully going to be responsible for funding food for all? Let's talk.
Okay.
Okay.
And just jumping in, one more thing, sorry. I think it's very important. So as vice chair of the education committee, we're also looking at food and hunger for our kids. You mentioned our kids in our schools. So we were very proud to pass a free school meals bill last session. I spoke with Chair Marcus Riccelli, and he's going to produce another bill that expands that again for more kids in our school across more grades. So I totally agree with you. We need to support our kids as well on the food front.
And I'd add, if you want to hear something wild, I had a bill from a couple of years ago where we were updating our monitoring requirements for children that were in need. And essentially, we were saying that if you had one able-bodied adult in your house that wasn't seeking work, you were disqualified from having food benefits if they weren't on the job hunt. And so I think we have a moral obligation to look at the monitoring requirements that we have for social services. I am very much looking forward to single point of entry for social services that is going to be unrolling in the next 18 months that says if you apply and you qualify for food benefits, it will let you know if you qualify for healthcare benefits, if you qualify for fuel vouchers and eyeglasses and all of these other things. We don't lift people out of poverty by giving them, one grocery week worth of food. And it's really a much more complex problem than that. And we have to really look at the morality of our monitoring requirements and make sure that we are literally talking about whether or not we're going to feed children.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Dr. Villa?
I'm Chris Villa, college president, Skagit Valley College. I just want to thank our local legislators for your continued support of the 34 community and technical colleges in the state of Washington. For this particular session, you can expect us to be meeting with you later this month in advocating, especially for two things in particular. One is our continued advocacy to provide more funding for our workforce development and CTE, career technical education programs, but also support for our bachelor degree programs. And in particular, this year, we are offering a bachelor's degree program in computer science. So we're really excited about that. And as you know, Washington, the state of Washington is a national leader in offering bachelor degree programs at community and technical colleges. My question has to do with the sense of your colleagues and yourselves with respect to advocacy or support for career technical education programs, workforce development programs, and also the expansion of bachelor degree programs in the state of Washington. So just like to know what your sense is amongst yourselves and your colleagues for this particular session.
Well, I noticed in the last 2 years, or 1 year that I've been on the education committee, that it is fully supported, all of them. But CT programs, everybody's supporting them. So I think maybe this is old news that you're talking about because we're all on board.
I was just going to say, thank you so much. First to Skagit County, thank you so much for the work you've done at the college. Congratulations on the diversity and equity that you've included with almost 30% Hispanic and Latino, and it's known throughout the state how incredibly well the college is run and how well it's taken care of. Also from the Washington State Criminal Law and Justice Academy, we will be the second hub, Pasco's the first in Tri-Cities. Skagit's going to be the second one to be able to host and be able to train our public safety officers up here in our Lone County, and it'll be provided not only in person, but also online. So congratulations on the great work to the college, to the county, to the cities. I also just want to say, not only do we do that, I know, right? We're patting each other on the backs, but there's a tough one coming. The Skagit County is the only location within all of Washington State that provides dental and health therapists training in the state of Washington. It's also one of the only in the United States, and that happens here, and it's based off of, the work and commitment you guys have. The conversation we will have, though, is the Washington State Scholarship Fund has underspent. This means there are $200 million still waiting. Those low income who are on and watching tonight, underneath the Washington Scholarship Fund, if you are making under 90,000, 70% of your 70% of your schooling's paid for. If you're making under 70,000, 90% of your schooling's paid for. If you go online and apply, there is still $200 million that Washington, not just youth, anyone who wants to go back to school can be able to use and apply. I will ask to relieve the workforce development, go into their careers underneath opioid and fentanyl crisis in the medical area, in the medical health area. We need you, but happy to collaborate. And thank you so much for being here today. And thanks for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Well, we are winding down, but Mary Hudson, please ask your question.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Nice to see you all up there too. Mary Hudson, City of Mount Vernon City Council. I don't really have a question. I have more of a request. The first request that I have is, I know Alex and I have talked, Rep. Rammel and I have talked about housing, manufactured homes. That is a crisis. I feel like it's a crisis in Mount Vernon. I feel like it's a crisis all over the state. People are raising the rents on people who live there, and they're mostly seniors and they live on fixed incomes. And if you're raising the rent $100 a month every year, they're going to be out of a house. So whatever you can do to help us cities, I'm speaking for myself as a city council member. I'd like to see zoning changes where we could do an overlay zone so that they cannot be redeveloped into apartment complexes. We need to do something about that. That's number one. Number two, I'm begging you, imploring you, please, when you pass bills and make laws, please make sure there are no unfunded mandates, because we have a skinny little amount of discretionary income in our budgets. We don't have the money to pay for extra things that, although are good, we don't have the money to pay for them. So then we're cutting services or having to raise taxes, which of course we all know nobody wants to do anyway, right? So those are my two requests. That's all I've got. I know it's a short session. Good luck. Knock some things out of the park. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Mary. Really appreciate that, and especially your advocacy on behalf of folks in manufactured housing. It's an enormous problem. There's an article, actually the news magazine Crosscut has done a series of articles about what's happening in that sector. And there are some unscrupulous actors who are buying up manufactured housing all over Washington state and really driving up rents for those folks. And it's not based on improving the property or anything else. It's just greed, and it's pushing people into homelessness. The rent stabilization bill that I mentioned earlier, happy to go into more detail if folks really want it. I try not to get too deep in the weeds, but would protect folks who own a manufactured home and are renting the lot that it's on. And so under that legislation that Emily Alvarado has introduced, their rent increases for those folks, including additional new fees that they weren't paying last year, rent increases plus fees could not increase more than 5% per year. So it would provide significant protection to those folks if we're able to pass that legislation. And I believe that bill is our top priority this coming legislative session.
I think we did it. Thank you very much. I am glad you have your track shoes on. There might be a few folks that would like to talk to you just a little bit more, but certainly appreciate your time. I know this is the worst time for you, but it's such perfect time for us together because of, well, you know why, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.